You've been in situations where someone walked all over you and you didn't even see it coming. You replayed it later and thought, how did I not notice that? The answer isn't that you were weak. The answer is that you didn't know what they knew, and by the end of this video, you will. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote a book back in 1513. It was called The Prince. And when people got their hands on it, they were uncomfortable because he basically wrote down everything that powerful people had been quietly doing for hundreds of years, and nobody had ever just said it out loud like that. He wasn't talking about being good or moral or fair. He was talking about how things actually go down when someone wants to stay in power, win a situation, or control what happens next. And look, this isn't just some old history lesson. This plays out every single day in your social circle, in conversations you thought were just casual, in group situations where someone always seems to come out on top. Someone's always working an angle, and most of the time, the other person has no idea. You've felt it before, right? You walk out of a conversation and something feels off. You agreed to something you didn't plan to agree to. Someone got credit for work you did. A situation went exactly the way one person wanted, and everyone else just kind of went along with it. And you're standing there afterward thinking, wait, what just happened? That's not luck on their part. That's them knowing something you don't. Here's what I want you to understand going into this video. I'm not putting this out here so you can go mess with people. That's not the point. The point is, when you understand how these moves work, you stop being the person who gets played. You start seeing things earlier. You stop reacting and start responding. Big difference. Machiavelli spent his whole life watching powerful people up close. He was deep inside the political world. He saw leaders rise and fall. And what he figured out was that the people who stayed on top weren't necessarily the smartest or the strongest. They just understood people better. They knew what made someone trust you, what made someone back down, what made someone feel like they were winning even when they were losing. We're going through 10 of those tactics today. And I'm telling you, by the time this video is done, you're going to think about at least 3 or 4 people in your life differently. Do you already have someone in mind? If so, type yes in the comments. Let's go. Number 1, control the information, control the person. Every single decision you make is based on what you know. That's it. You decide what to eat based on what you know is in the fridge. You decide who to trust based on what you know about that person. You decide how to respond in a situation based on what you know is going on. So here's the question. What happens when someone else is controlling what you know? That's the first Machiavellian trick, and it's probably the most powerful one on this entire list. Control the information that reaches someone, and you basically control what they think, what they feel, and what they decide to do next. You're not forcing them into anything. You're just quietly shaping the world they're seeing. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He watched rulers do it all the time. A prince didn't need to be everywhere. He just needed to make sure the right stories were being told about him. The right news reached the right ears. The wrong information never made it through at all. There's an old saying, he who controls the narrative controls the outcome. Think about that for a second. It's not about who's loudest or who's strongest. It's about who gets to decide what version of events people are walking around with. Because once someone believes a version of something, it is incredibly hard to undo that. People don't just update their beliefs easily. They hold on to the first thing they heard, the first impression, the first story. And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't always done in a dramatic way. Most of the time it's subtle. Someone mentions one detail and leaves out another. They bring something up at just the right moment. They introduce you to someone, but frame you in a very specific way before you even open your mouth. By the time you realize what framing you've been put in, everyone around you already has a picture of you in their head. The way to protect yourself from this is simple, but it takes discipline. Never make a big decision based on information from just one source. Always ask, who gave me this? What do they gain from me believing it? What am I not being told here? Because the moment you start asking those questions, the whole game changes. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I control my narrative. Number 2, make people need you. There's a reason certain people never get pushed out of any circle. It doesn't matter what changes around them. New people come in, situations shift, the whole dynamic flips, and somehow that one person always stays relevant. Always stays in the loop, always has a seat at the table. It's not charm, it's not luck. It's that they made themselves hard to replace. Machiavelli had a clear view on this. He said that the smartest move a person can make is to position themselves so that others depend on them, not in a desperate, clingy way, in a quiet, structural way. You become the person who knows things others don't. You become the one who can get things done that nobody else seems to be able to figure out. You make yourself load-bearing, like a wall in a building that if you remove it, the whole thing starts shaking. Think about the people in your life who always seem untouchable. The ones nobody messes with, not because they're aggressive, but because losing them would create a real problem. That's not an accident. They built that position deliberately, even if they never sat down and said, I'm going to do this. Most people spend their whole lives being replaceable and wondering why nobody seems to value them enough. Here's the dark side of this tactic that Machiavelli would point out. If you make someone need you, you also gain a quiet kind of control over them. They won't move against you. They won't cut you off because they genuinely can't afford to. Not because you threatened them, just because you built yourself into their life in a way that's hard to undo. Now, the flip side. If you want to protect yourself from this being used on you, pay attention to when you feel like you can't do something without a specific person. That dependency is usually not an accident. Someone built it. Ask yourself how it got there. The goal isn't to need nobody. The goal is to know exactly where your dependencies are and why. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I am irreplaceable. Number 3, use silence as a weapon. Most people are terrified of silence. Sit in a room with someone and let 30 seconds go by without anyone saying anything and watch what happens. Someone always breaks. Someone always fills the gap. And 9 times out of 10, the person who fills it says something they didn't plan to say. That's not a coincidence. Silence creates pressure, and pressure makes people talk. Machiavelli didn't write extensively about silence specifically, but his entire framework was built around emotional control. And silence is one of the purest forms of emotional control that exists. When you stop reacting, when you stop rushing to fill every gap, when you just sit there calm and quiet, you force the other person to do the work. And while they're doing that work, they're revealing things about what they're worried about what they want, about where they feel uncertain. Skilled negotiators have known this for decades. You make your point, you state what you want, and then you shut up. The next person who speaks is usually the one who gives something up. It sounds almost too simple, but it works every single time because silence feels unbearable to most people. There's an old proverb that captures this perfectly. A wise man's heart is in his mouth, but a fool's mouth is in his heart. What that means is that a fool just says whatever he's feeling the moment he feels it. A wise person thinks first and speaks with purpose. The fool gives everything away. The wise person chooses what to give. Here's how this shows up in everyday situations. Someone says something that bothers you. Instead of immediately firing back, you just look at them. Calm, no expression, let it sit. That person will almost always backtrack, explain themselves, or soften what they just said. without you doing anything at all, or you're in a situation where someone's trying to pressure you into a decision. You don't argue, you don't defend, you just go quiet. Stay comfortable in that silence while they get increasingly uncomfortable in it. The person who can sit in silence without flinching holds enormous power in any exchange. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Silence is power. Number 4, always let them think it was their idea. People will fight hard to protect their own ideas. They'll argue for them, defend them, push for them, even when they're not the best option on the table. But here's the thing, that same energy, that same commitment can be pointed in any direction, including yours. If you can get someone to believe that your idea is actually their idea, they will work for it harder than you ever could. This is one of the most quietly effective tactics Machiavelli-style thinkers have used throughout history. You don't push your agenda. You plant it. You drop a thought into a conversation and let it sit. You ask questions that guide someone toward a specific conclusion. You frame things in a way that makes the other person feel like they just figured something out on their own. And then you step back and let them run with it. The beauty of it is that there's no resistance. When people feel ownership over an idea, they don't push back on it. They champion it. They bring other people on board. They handle the hard work of convincing everyone else, because in their mind, they came up with it. There's an old saying that applies here. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn. Now, most people use that quote in a positive context, but look at it from a strategic angle. When someone feels involved in a decision, it sticks. It becomes theirs. That's the whole point. Machiavelli warned that a leader who constantly forces his will on people creates resentment. But a leader who makes people feel like they're choosing freely, even when the choice has been shaped for them, creates loyalty. Deep, genuine feeling loyalty. To protect yourself from this one, start paying attention to how ideas get introduced to you. Who brought it up first? How were the options framed? Were you given a real choice, or were you guided to a specific one through the way the question was asked? Because sometimes the most important thing isn't what decision you made. It's understanding who set up the situation that made you make it. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My idea. My power. Number 5, control the pace, control the outcome. Every situation has a pace to it. Some things move fast, some things slow down. And whoever controls that speed has a massive advantage that most people never even notice is happening. When things move fast, people don't think clearly. They react instead of respond. They make decisions before they've had time to really sit with them. And rush decisions almost always favor the person who created the rush. On the other side, when things move slow, when someone deliberately stalls or delays, it creates a different kind of pressure. Uncertainty builds. People start second-guessing. They start wondering if something is wrong, and that anxiety makes them easier to push in a specific direction when the moment finally comes. Machiavelli understood timing deeply. He wrote that a prince must know when to move quickly and when to wait. Acting too early is just as dangerous as acting too late. The person who masters timing masters outcomes. There's an old proverb that hits this point hard. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. And that's not just about waiting. It's about understanding that the person willing to wait longer than everyone else in the room usually walks away with the most, because everyone else already gave something up just to end the discomfort of waiting. Watch how this plays out. Someone wants an answer from you right now. They're pushing, creating urgency. But is the urgency real or manufactured? A lot of times it's manufactured. The pressure is designed to make you skip the thinking part and just commit. The moment you recognize that, you take your time anyway, and suddenly the whole dynamic shifts. On the flip side, if you're trying to move something forward and someone keeps stalling, that's a tactic too. They're waiting you out, hoping you'll get frustrated enough to give something up just to get things moving again. The person who stays calm, regardless of the pace, whether things are being rushed or dragged, is the person who keeps their head clear. And a clear head is always going to outperform a pressured one. Number 6. Appear weaker than you are. This one goes against everything most people think about power. Usually the advice is to project confidence, show strength, let people know what you're capable of. And sure, there's a time for that. But Machiavelli pointed out something that most people miss. Showing all your strength up front is actually a strategic mistake. When people know exactly what you're capable of, they prepare for it. They build walls around it. They figure out how to neutralize it. But when they underestimate you, they leave gaps wide open. They don't bother preparing for something they don't think is coming. Throughout history, some of the most decisive victories happened because one side was completely underestimated. The opponent didn't take them seriously. They didn't plan carefully. They got comfortable, and comfortable people make mistakes. Still waters run deep. The quiet river looks calm and easy to cross. But under that surface, there's more going on than anyone can see from the bank. The people who make the most noise about how powerful they are usually have the least going on underneath. The ones who say nothing and just move, those are the ones you need to watch. Machiavelli specifically advised against revealing your full hand before it was necessary. Let people think you're limited. Let them feel like they have the upper hand. Because when someone thinks they're winning comfortably, they stop paying close attention. And the moment they stop paying attention is the moment everything can shift. Now, this doesn't mean you walk around pretending to be helpless. That's not the point. The point is strategic restraint. You know what you're capable of. You just don't broadcast it to everyone. You keep something in reserve, always. The person sitting quietly in the corner who nobody's watching. Sometimes that's the most dangerous person in the room. Not because they're aggressive, but because nobody thought to account for them. Ask yourself right now, are you showing too much of your hand in certain situations? Are people preparing for you because you've already told them everything you've got? Sometimes the smartest move is letting people think they already know you. Number 7. Use praise to disarm people. Nobody guards themselves against a compliment. That's just human nature. When someone says something genuinely positive about you, your walls come down a little. You feel good. You feel seen. And in that moment, you're more open, more trusting, more willing to give something back. Machiavelli recognized that people are moved far more by how you make them feel than by the logic of what you're saying. You can have the most reasonable argument in the world, but if someone feels defensive or disrespected, they won't hear a word of it. But make someone feel valued first, even briefly, and suddenly they're much more receptive to everything that comes after. This is why skilled people lead with acknowledgement before they make a request. They find something real to appreciate about the other person and they say it. Then when they get to what they actually want, the other person is already in a warmer place emotionally. The ask lands differently. Honey catches more flies than vinegar. You've probably heard it before. But think about how rarely people actually apply it. Most people lead with what they want, or worse, with what they're unhappy about, and then they wonder why they keep getting resistance. Now here's the darker edge that Machiavelli would point to. Praise can be used as a setup. You build someone up, make them feel confident and appreciated, and then you ask them for something in that glow. Or you use repeated praise to make someone loyal to you, because people naturally want to stay close to whoever makes them feel good about themselves. The protection against this is learning to notice the timing of compliments. Is someone praising you right before they need something? Is the praise consistent, or does it only show up at convenient moments? Genuine appreciation doesn't follow a pattern that always benefits the other person. Real compliments feel easy and unprompted. Strategic ones almost always come attached to something. That doesn't mean every compliment is manipulation. Most aren't. But knowing the difference keeps you from being softened up at the wrong moment. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I see through flattery. Number 8. create the illusion of choice. People need to feel like they're in control of their own decisions. That feeling of autonomy, of choosing freely, is something humans guard almost instinctively. Take it away and people push back hard. Give it to them and they relax, they cooperate, they feel good about what just happened, even if the outcome was never really up to them. This is one of the most sophisticated moves in the Machiavellian playbook. You don't tell someone what to do. You give them two options, but both options lead where you want to go. Think about how simple that is. You're not forcing anything, you're not even arguing. You just frame the situation so that no matter which door they pick, you get your outcome. And they walk away feeling like they made the call. Machiavelli wrote about this in the context of how a ruler should handle difficult people. Instead of direct confrontation, which creates enemies, you give people a path where they feel like they chose their position. They didn't feel cornered. They feel like they participated, and that makes the outcome stick much better. There's a proverb that connects here. Between two evils, choose neither. Between two goods, choose both. But in practice, the person setting up the choice often makes sure neither option is bad for them. The chooser gets the feeling of control. The setter gets the result. Watch for this in how questions get framed around you. Do you want to handle this now or later? Both options mean you're handling it. Would you prefer A or B? What if you wanted C? The options were already narrowed before you got involved. Once you start noticing how often choices are pre-shaped for you, you'll start asking different questions. You'll push outside the options given. You'll ask why those are the only two. That simple move, just refusing to stay inside the box someone else built, changes the whole conversation. Real choice means you could say no entirely. Real choice means you could introduce a third option. If that possibility doesn't exist, you weren't really choosing. You were just picking a lane on someone else's road. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I choose my own path. Number 9, make your absence feel like a loss. Most people work hard to be present, to show up, to be available, and that's fine up to a point. But here's what Machiavelli understood that most people don't. Constant availability destroys perceived value. When you're always there, always reachable, always ready, people stop noticing you. You become part of the background. But the moment you're gone, suddenly people remember exactly what you bring. Absence, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful ways to remind people of your value without saying a single word. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to make a scene. You just pull back, become a little less available, and let the space do the work. Machiavelli talked about how a ruler should not be so accessible that he becomes ordinary. Familiarity doesn't breed respect. It breeds assumption. People start taking for granted what they can always have. But what they have to wait for, what they don't know when they'll get again, that carries weight. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And while that's usually said in a sentimental way, there's real strategic truth underneath it. When you're gone, people fill in the gap with memory, and memory tends to be kinder than reality. They remember the good, they feel the loss, they want you back. Now this only works if you've actually built something worth missing. If nobody notices when you're gone, that's its own message worth paying attention to. But if you've put in the work, if you've been genuinely valuable and present, then pulling back strategically creates a kind of gravity. People move toward you. The protection against this being used on you is simple awareness. When someone suddenly becomes less available and you feel yourself wanting to chase, pause. Ask yourself if that shift was natural or deliberate. Is this person genuinely busy, or are they manufacturing distance to pull you in? Because sometimes people disappear on purpose, and knowing that changes how you respond. Don't chase the absence. Let it play out. See what comes back on its own. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My absence speaks volumes. Number 10. Never show desperation. This might be the most important lesson on this entire list, and it's also the hardest one to follow because it goes directly against what we feel in high-pressure moments. When you need something badly, every instinct tells you to push harder, to make people understand how much it matters, to show them how serious you are. But here's what actually happens when you do that. The moment someone sees your desperation, the power shifts entirely to their side. They know you need it. They know you'll accept less. They know you'll wait longer and put up with more. And they act accordingly. Machiavelli was blunt about this. He said, "A prince who begs is a prince who has already lost." Because the act of begging signals that you have no other options, and someone with no other options has no leverage. There's an old proverb that captures this perfectly. Beggars can't be choosers. Most people hear that and think it's just about money or resources, but it applies to any situation where you've shown your hand too early and let someone know just how much you need what they have. The counter to this is one of the hardest things to actually pull off. You have to genuinely not care, or at least appear not to, even when you do. You walk into situations looking like you have options, like this is just one conversation among many, like if this doesn't work out, something else will. That posture changes everything about how you're treated. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about maintaining your ground, not letting urgency leak into your body language, your tone, or your words. Because people read all of that, even when they don't consciously realize they're doing it. The person who seems the least desperate in any situation almost always gets the better end of what comes out of it. Not because they're smarter, just because they didn't tip their hand. Keep your needs close. Keep your options open, even if some of those options are just ones you haven't ruled out yet. And never, ever let someone see you sweat. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I never beg, ever. All right. We just went through 10 tactics that Machiavelli spent his lifetime studying in the real world. And I want to wrap this up by saying something important. None of this was meant to make you paranoid. I know some of this stuff can feel heavy when you first hear it. Like, wait, are people really doing this around me? And the honest answer is, some are. Not everyone. And now you know what to look for. Here's what I want you to actually take away from this video. Awareness is the beginning of everything. You cannot defend against something you don't recognize. You cannot use something you don't understand. The people who move through life getting consistently good outcomes aren't always the most talented or the loudest. A lot of times they're just the most aware. They see situations for what they are. They don't panic when pressure shows up. They don't give away information they don't have to. They know when to speak and when to stay quiet. They understand that every interaction has a dynamic, and that dynamic can either work for you or against you depending on how awake you are to it. Machiavelli got a bad reputation over the centuries. People hear the word Machiavellian and they think villain. He looked at how powerful people actually behaved and he wrote it down. The discomfort people felt reading it wasn't because he invented something evil. It was because he described something real that everyone already knew was happening, but nobody wanted to say. You now have that knowledge. What you do with it is completely up to you. Use it to protect yourself. Use it to move smarter. That's the whole point. If this video gave you even one thing you're going to think about differently going forward, that's a win. That's what this is for. And if you found real value in this, hit that like button. Share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. There's a lot more coming that you don't want to miss. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these 10 hit closest to home for you. Which one made you think of someone specific? I read these. I want to know. Stay sharp, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one. Knowledge is my power.